This is your host, Maheen, and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast, a platform that is dedicated to shining a spotlight on the backbone of Canada's economy, the small and medium sized enterprises. This show is all about discussing the vital role of SMEs in fostering economic growth, innovation, and community development across our nation. And in each episode, we dive deep into the challenges and triumphs faced by small business owners, offering insights, advice, and inspiration to help you navigate the complex landscape of entrepreneurship. Today's episode focuses on the intersection of Indigenous culture, art, and technology, exploring how these elements can be harnessed to empower Indigenous youth and communities. While fostering digital sovereignty and tech equity, we delve into the innovative work of the Indigenous Friends Association and the unique contributions of Indigenous artists to the tech world, highlighting the importance of inclusivity and representation in the digital age. Today, we're joined by two remarkable individuals, Alejandro Mayoral Banos and Tsista Kennedy. Alejandro, a devoted Mixtec and Totonac activist, serves as the executive director and founder of the Indigenous Friends Association, a non-for-profit organization that leverages technology to empower Indigenous communities in Canada. With a PhD from the Collaborative Program in Communication and Culture offered by York University and Toronto Metropolitan University, Alejandro has dedicated his career to advocating for tech equity, digital sovereignty, and creating sustainable career pathways for Indigenous peoples. Tsista Kennedy, an Anishinaabe, own-yoh-da-ah-gah artist from Bosole First Nation and Oneida Nation of Thames, brings his unique wisdom to the IFA as a digital illustrator and program facilitator. As self-taught artist, Tsista's work is known for its vibrant colors and bold line work, reflecting the organization's nature and mission through his Woodland Style Art. Join us as we delve into their journeys, the impactful work that they do with the Indigenous Friends Association, and Tsista's artistic contributions that bring Indigenous narratives to the forefront of digital spaces. Good afternoon, Alejandro and Tsista. Welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having us.
I'm doing well, thank you.
It's an honor to have you both here today. Alejandro, your journey from the founding of Indigenous Friends Association to becoming an Ashoka Fellow is incredibly inspiring. And Tsista, your artistic talent and dedication to portraying Indigenous stories through digital art are truly commendable as well. And now we're quite excited to learn more about your experiences and the transformative work that you're doing with the IFA. Let's begin by hearing the creation story of the IFA. I mean, the Indigenous Friends Association stands as a beacon for innovation and empowerment for Indigenous communities through technology. Alejandro, could you share with us, the creation story of the IFA? Like, what motivated its establishment and how has it evolved since its inception?
Oh yes, of course. I'm very happy to share this beautiful story. This story started in community. At the time I was in school, I was at York University, and I was just trying to find myself in this big institution, trying to figure it out and connecting with different communities. And there was a conversation with an Elder Blue Waters, a Two-Spirit elder from Toronto, and Ruth Colester Green, that is a knowledge keeper at York. And we were talking about, I was talking about my journey, that I was trying to find my community, finding my place. And the elder put some tobacco down and told me, Alejandro, you are in your community. Your community is here in the city, and you need to find your place here. And I'm going to ask you to start the journey of creating an app, a mobile application. You have a computer science background, so you know the digital tech industry, you know all these things. And now I want you to start creating a space for communities to gather in the digital space. My reply immediately was like, I don't know about apps. When I was in school, there were no apps. And the elder replied to me, Alejandro, that's part of your journey. Now this is your discovery journey, and now you need to start learning about, how to create an app, but also like following Indigenous ways of knowing. And this is very important that you are going to be that gatekeeper between the two worlds. So that journey started in January 2015. That conversation happened in that moment, and we started the development of the Indigenous Friends app. This app was a mobile application to connect Indigenous students in post-secondary educational institutions. And the idea of the app, you can see in my background, basically people that are in different physical spaces can be connected through technology, and they can start their healing journey in the physical space, in the non-digital world. Because of course, healing always happens in the land, happens in the non-digital world, but how we can trigger that from digital spaces. And that idea evolved, and that app started creating a lot of conversations about how traditional knowledge can inform the creation of technology. And this is when we realized that there were not many spaces for Indigenous peoples to actually construct, to build digital tech. And there was an underrepresentation of Indigenous peoples in the tech industry. And this is when we created in 2019 in Digital, our first educational program that actually gathers this traditional knowledge with the tech skills. So how we are going to be able to teach and learn digital skills, but at the same time, learning about our cultures, learning about who we are, and at the same time, develop our technical skills. And what we discovered is that this was a very successful formula to actually go into communities because people, youth, were connected to who they are, and at the same time being connected to, all these digital platforms. So it was a very beautiful journey. And well, now that has increased. Now we have different educational programs in digital and digitech, and we have a lot of Indigenous talent working in several organizations and companies across the country, adding value to the organizations because, of course, they are bringing their perspectives in the creation of technology.
Mm-hmm. No, we love the inspiration and the motivation behind finding IFA, and thank you so much for sharing that inspiring story. But Alejandro, what has been some of the pivotal moments in the journey of the IFA that have shaped its direction and focus?
You know what? One of the major moments in IFA was the pandemic, of course, because when the pandemic hit all of us, there was a big change. We thought that this was going to be a big impact, a negative impact in our programs, because of course, before the pandemic, we were doing everything in person, going to communities, going on reserve, going to suburban areas in order to have these programs. But actually, the pandemic opened a lot of different doors for us because we discovered that there were a lot of people in communities coming together in these spaces. And as a lot of the participants and mentees have shared with us, this is these are the few opportunities that they have in community because they are single moms. They have a lot of other commitments, so they cannot travel 45 minutes, 1 hour to a community center to get trained. So the idea that actually they can get all this training online has been very successful. And basically that pivotal moment was that when we opened the programs on the digital space, basically we were receiving people from all over the country. From the 10 provinces and the 3 territories, people were connected and they were eager to learn more about this. And I think that was an incredible moment. A second pivotal moment that I will share with the audience is when we started actually placing a lot of the Indigitech mentees more than 2 years ago in different digital tech companies. So it was very interesting to start having conversations with big companies about how they can create safer, never safe, but at least safer spaces for the youth and how they can achieve a career in the digital tech sector. Those 2 moments were pivotal in our growth and in who we are today.
No, thank you, Alejandro, for sharing more details about this. I mean, it's quite clear that the IFA is more than just an organization. It's a whole movement towards creating meaningful change and opportunities for Indigenous peoples. And on that note, to our dedicated listeners, as we've just heard about the origins and evolution of the Indigenous Friends Association from Alejandro, it's quite a powerful reminder of the impact that that the passion and the purpose can have in driving forward meaningful change. And this story isn't just about the inception of an organization. It's quite a testament to the transformative power of combining technology with Indigenous knowledge and leadership. So let this be a call to action for all of us, and to not only support such incredible initiatives, but also to think about how we can leverage our own skills and platforms to make a difference in our communities. The journey of the IFA challenges us to look beyond the conventional and to innovate us with more empathy and inclusivity at the forefront. Now, let's touch base with Tsista's artistic journey. Like, let's hear more about that as well. Now, art has the power to tell stories, evoke emotions, and inspire change. And Tsista, your work with the IFA has brought a distinct visual identity to the organization. Can you tell us about your journey into becoming an artist and how you became involved with the IFA?
Yeah, I can definitely talk about that. So for me, whenever I get asked this question, I always go back to elementary school. I'd say that's where it all starts. So for me, I never really took to any kind of schooling. I'd always just sit there and draw on my schoolwork. That was the way I passed the time and kind of escape boredom. So, when you're going to school, 5 days out of the week for most of the year, you have a lot of time to do artwork. So for me, I'd sit there just drawing and I'd catch a good bit of flack from the teachers for doing that. They'd pull me off to the side and say, you got to quit doing that. You got to do some actual schoolwork, and that would usually keep the artwork off the school pages and things like that for a little while, but it always come back again after a short bit. Um, but I would say when I started taking my artwork seriously, it would have to be around the age of 14. So I kept up with my artwork, and then I believe it was around the summer of 2014 or 15, around there, I created my first piece of woodland style art. And that was kind of accidental. I didn't really know a whole lot about woodland style art other than, there was a piece hanging up in my family's house that I kind of glanced at every now and then. But I ended up drawing a turtle clan, or a turtle, because I'm turtle clan, and I actually ended up selling it to my uncle. He's turtle clan as well, and he bought it for $100, I believe. And so that kind of helped me realize that, man, I could actually, make a little bit of money off this art thing. And that's what actually incentivized me to focus on this style of artwork. And then I realized it came to me kind of naturally. So as I continued developing it, I started to realize I can do some really interesting storytelling with this piece of artwork and this style. So for me, basically from the age of 15 to 18, there was a whole lot of trial and error for me trying to figure out my way as an artist. So whenever a community center, a local Indigenous community center would do like a logo contest or a magazine cover contest or anything of the sort, I would always create a piece of artwork and contribute it to that. There was all kinds of different artistic opportunities. I remember there was one, I can't recall exactly what the contest was called. It was a national Canadian Arts and Stories contest, I believe it was, and it was open to Indigenous youth and adults to create submissions. And by this time I was 17. So I created this big long piece that had to do with the uh, seven grandfather teachings and the seven generations. And that piece there ended up winning me first place for that national contest there. And so they flew me out to Ottawa. I met the Governor General at the time, and they had this big fancy dinner and all that stuff. I felt a little out of place, but it was a pretty awesome experience nonetheless. And yeah, every time there was an opportunity to contribute my artwork, I would take it. And eventually that led me to discovering digital art. It was always in the back of my head because it was something I was curious about for a while, but I didn't actually act on that interest until I had a good summer job and had enough money to buy myself an iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil, and being able to draw on a digital art software and a device that where I can draw it right on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I began doing that and started making just little pieces. They'd still be woodland style art, but it was really difficult to adapt from paper to digital. But I stuck with it, and I'm real glad I did. I ended up taking on a screen printing internship that really helped boost my digital art experience. Um, and then I believe it was 2020 when 2020 came around, I'd recently moved out of my family's house. I had a lot of responsibilities. I had folks to support financially, so I figured, I gotta get a job because I recently just dropped out of high school, or not high school, college around that time as well. So at first I got a job at a drop-in shelter, and when the pandemic came around, I left that and figured I'd jump into creating artwork full time. And that was also around the time I came across a little advertisement on Facebook. This nonprofit was looking for a digital illustrator, and I figured, oh well, I'm a digital artist. I'll throw some artwork their way and my resume, and sure enough, it was the Indigenous Friends Association, and I ended up getting the job after the interview. So from there, that's when I started working with IFA, and so my journey as an artist personally and my journey being an artist with IFA, they're both very close. I've kind of grown in both ways when it comes to my artwork. So when I started doing artwork with IFA or doing illustrations for IFA, they were relatively new. They needed a logo, they needed um, artwork for the website and things like that. So I just really helped them collaboratively build their brand and create all the artwork you see today on their websites.
No, Tsista, I mean, your dedication to your craft and your ability to weave storytelling through art is truly remarkable. But how do you really approach creating artwork for the IFA, and what do you hope people take away from your art?
Yeah, so for me, it really depends on what the message is that's trying to be portrayed. So for me, what my artistic approach has always been is I like to meet with people and I like to receive as much information I can about what I'm going to be illustrating. So I remember the first few things that I actually illustrated for the Indigenous Friends Association. A lot of them had to do with the mission and vision at the time and what the organization stood for. And for me, it's really a process of taking in all that information and just kind of reflecting on it and meditating on it for a little bit and trying to figure out in my head and then on the digital art software how I can conceptualize those things into one coherent image. And sometimes it comes right off the bat. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to put that all together in a coherent way, but it's certainly a meticulous process that takes a good bit of time. But for me, what I'd have to say is that creating artwork with the Indigenous Friends Association, it's certainly um, a collaborative process, because for me as the artist, I'm just the artist creating the artwork based off of what the folks at IFA are telling me and sharing with me. So it's certainly something where we work as equals together to bring an image and the life to the visual aspects of the organization here.
No, thank you so much for giving us a glimpse into your creative process. And to our listeners, to reflect on Ajisa's journey and his impactful work with the IFA, it's clear that art is not just a form of expression, but a powerful medium for storytelling and cultural preservation. And Ajisa's dedication to portraying Indigenous narratives through his vibrant and bold artwork serves as a vibrant reminder of the importance of representation in all forms of media. And on listeners and members of a diverse and interconnected world, let's take a moment to really appreciate the role of artists like Gista who bring depth, color, and life to stories that need to be told. Now, let's kind of delve deeper into empowering Indigenous youth through technology. I mean, the IFA has to have developed various initiatives and programs designed to support Indigenous youth in tech, education, and digital literacy. What are some of the success stories or notable achievements the IFA has had in empowering Indigenous youth through technology?
Yeah, for sure. I can answer this one. And I think, the last bit I said was a great segue into this. After I started working with IFA as a digital illustrator, we actually figured it'd be a good idea for me to start teaching digital art in the in digital and in digitech programs. So for me, I've been teaching digital art to Indigenous youth and adults for quite a while now. I'd say for the majority of the time I've been working with IFA. And one thing that we have, or that I experience in these programs, is a lot of people coming out saying that, they've had really positive experiences with reconnecting with their creative spark. For example, this one woman that took our program, Diane, um,
Mm.
she says she basically, she was discouraged and she kind of got disconnected to her love for creating artwork when she was younger. And through my methods of teaching digital art, which is more through not a Western approach of education, but more through an Indigenous lens where we focus on storytelling, we focus solely on sharing our stories and these rules of composition and color theory. They're more suggestions and tools that you can use in your artwork. They're not, some square that you can check off on a rubric or anything like that. And that's a story, Diane's story of, reconnecting with artwork through this program and her experiences in the past creating artwork. It's something that a lot of people share in those programs that I run in terms of digital art. So for me, that's my passion right there, is helping people reconnect with their interest in creating artwork and their love for creating artwork. And I think the sheer scale of how many people go through that program, based on my experiences, hearing them share their stories of how they've reconnected to it, I'd say, that's a huge success right there for me.
Right.
And
And mhm.
oh, I just want to share another quick story, that very powerful, rounded moment for IFA was Jamie Mike. Jamie Mike was one of our participants in Digital in Regina. We had this 3-week program in Regina in 2019, and we were collaborating with different local organizations in the region. And it was very powerful because 2 years later, he was hired as a journalist in the Toronto Star. And at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, he interviewed me, being part of Toronto Star. So, it was clear that actually in digital impacted him in a very, very positive way, and how actually a lot of his self-confidence and a lot of the skills that he required to apply for the job were like was part of the program. They were part of the program. So I was very glad to see this circle moment that actually, that one of the participants of In Digital interview me as part of his new job. So that was a very powerful story as well.
It is. I mean, the work you both are doing to bridge the gap between Indigenous communities and the tech industry is not just innovative, but deeply impactful. Now, looking towards the future, what are some ongoing or upcoming projects that IFA is excited about, and how can our listeners get involved to support your work?
Oh, excellent. Thank you. And this is very exciting because right now, of course, as Tsista and myself, we already explained, we have the educational programs in digital and in digitech that are focused on Indigenous members in order to get tech skills. However, we have two other streams of work that we are very passionate about. One is we continue understanding through research how companies, businesses can welcome more Indigenous members into their spaces, how these spaces can be safer for a lot of Indigenous talent to succeed especially in the digital economy. So on this sense, we are creating some toolkits that are going to be available around June for small businesses and companies, how actually they can start creating better spaces. So that's first stream, the research component. And the second one is also we are developing technology. We are right now we already have a beta version of iConnected. iConnected is an educational platform to deliver content for not just for Indigenous peoples, but for any marginalized community. The innovation of this technology is that we are delivering the content in WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. So students and participants, they don't need to download a new app or they need to get a new service. The only thing that they need is to have a Facebook account or WhatsApp account, and they can have access to educational content. So this has been very successful with a lot of marginalized communities because basically they are receiving the educational content wherever they are. And we are seeing a lot of excitement through this approach. And of course, how we can do this respecting the data and and the privacy of all the students. So this has been these are the projects that are besides IFA. If someone in the audience is eager to know more, of course, you can go to www.indigenousfriends.org, and also you can volunteer with us. Actually, we just launched our volunteer program. And we are very excited. We have a very diverse group of people that are supporting our students. We are right now also looking for mentors for our mentees of Indigitech. So very excited if anyone in the audience wants to be part of the movement.
Thank you, Alejandro. I mean, your success stories, both of your success stories serves as a testament to the power of community, technology, and education. Now, in a world where technology increasingly shapes every aspect of our lives, the concepts of digital sovereignty and tech equity are more important than ever, especially for Indigenous communities. Now, Alejandro, could you elaborate on how the Indigenous Friends Association is working towards advancing digital sovereignty and tech equity among Indigenous peoples?
I think this is a great question, and especially because it connects the story of Tsista with my story and with the story of a lot of other mentees. And it basically is right now, with all the challenges that we are facing in digital spaces, harassment, discrimination, the mining of personal data. One thing that we are doing from the IFA is how traditional knowledge and indigenous worldviews can inform the design of technology. So this is not just about indigenizing technology, but about to create more ethical digital tech for all. So what does that mean? That from millennia, indigenous peoples, we have been sharing, and we have different practices and protocols in order to benefit community and benefit the land. So how those principles that initially are non-digital, how now they can also shape how the digital is being created. So it's really interesting when we are able to do that. I can give you just one simple example. For example, when we are talking about creating an application, commonly the application has different roles. You have a developer, a user, an admin. However, in indigenous communities, we have the clan systems because the clan systems are attached to responsibilities. So the idea is that it's not that one has more power over the other, is how these different roles, these different clans have different responsibilities towards creating a better space for all. So having this change of perspective when we are designing technology can create better spaces for all. So it's not about just creating a super user that has all the power to erase all the data and to have access to all the data. It's how actually all of us that we are part of a digital space, we have a responsibility towards that community. This is just one small principle of an ethical and protocol that was in many communities way before digital technologies, but it's actually solving one of the biggest issues that digital tech is having today.
Right. No, Alejandro, you've not only highlighted the critical need for inclusive technological development, but also pointed towards a future where technology empowers all communities equally. Now, to build onto this a bit more, how can technology companies and the broader tech community contribute or support the IFA's mission in promoting digital sovereignty and tech equity for Indigenous communities?
Oh, that's a great question and a great call. Well, first, of course, is providing opportunities for indigenous peoples to get an internship within the companies. What we have developed a mentorship framework. So the idea is we collaborate with businesses and companies in order for them to go alongside the internship of our mentees so they can succeed in the workplace. So it's just about one, to create opportunities for indigenous mentees, and you can have way more information if you go to our website. And the second, of course, is through donations. The donations go to in order to continue supporting the indigenous youth to go through these training programs and internship programs. And what we have seen is that these small efforts are creating a lot of momentum within communities. Why? Because providing the opportunity for indigenous youth to get into the tech sector, to have an internship, actually changes the dynamic. Because now, even that is just a 3 months internship, now they have a completely different mindset in order to pursue a tech career, and
Mhm.
now able to work remotely and without going out of their communities is also bringing a lot of economy within the community, and how that changes the dynamic in the community. So the impact is huge with these two streams.
Right. No, thank you so much for sharing your vision and the actionable steps we all can take to support this wonderful mission. Now, let's discuss the role of art in community empowerment. I mean, art possesses a unique power to inspire change, tell stories, and really bring communities together. Tsista, this one's for you. I mean, can you share more about the role your art plays in community empowerment, and how do you see it influencing or inspiring Indigenous youth and communities?
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest part is that Indigenous representation does a whole lot for us as Indigenous youth. For me, one thing I did last year for Orange Shirt Day, Every Child Matters, was I created a bus wrap for Grand River Transit in Waterloo. So I created a story honoring all those children who were lost through the residential school systems and those that survived it. And I learned this morning or this afternoon that this bus wrap would actually be extended until the end of this September, when originally it was only supposed to be on there for a month. And that helps us as Indigenous people feel heard, and it helps ensure that our experiences and those stories are kept alive and never forgotten. And I recall also doing something for the London Health Sciences Center. It was the first large-scale mural I ever did. They had this new Indigenous healing space. So I was approached by a man named Bill Hill to help create the artwork for that space there. And I think that's where Indigenous representation helps our people. And the same can be said with IFA too. When people see these spaces or these projects or these courses or anything of the sort, and it has Indigenous imagery and artwork on it, genuine Indigenous imagery and artwork, they can look at that and see, okay, this is a safe space. Or, even in their own lives, they can say, I feel represented, I feel heard, I feel seen. Because unfortunately, for a lot of us as Indigenous people, we feel the opposite of that too often. So when it comes to digital artwork and empowering our communities, um, I think it can also be a great tool for us to ensure our own stories are heard. I'm just one artist,
Mhm.
but through teaching digital art to all you know, these people that access our courses and our classes, it's creating a ripple effect. Because they'll learn how to create digital artwork, and then perhaps they'll pass that on to their future children or members of their community. And so, for us as Indigenous people, storytelling is a huge part of our culture. I know for myself as, an Anishinaabe and own-yoh-da-ah-gah young man, storytelling is huge. It's, the very foundation of our culture and our identity and our ceremonies. And so I think that's why for us as Indigenous people, it's really important that we have the ability to express ourselves creativity and create artwork and just share our stories the best way we can. So that's how I would say, digital art helps empower our Indigenous communities.
Your dedication to using art as a force for community empowerment and cultural expression is truly inspiring, Gista. And given the nature of your work, how do you think digital art and platforms can further enhance the visibility and impact of Indigenous stories and voices in the broader cultural landscape?
Well, it can help that in so many ways. The first one is that, and this has been my experience in the past, uh, physical art supplies can be pretty expensive in the long run. And at the same time, it might not always be possible to access these physical art supplies. So, for example, when I want to go to Michael's, it's probably a 4 or 5 hour round trip. From my reservation, I got to take a boat, I got to take a vehicle. If I don't have one, there's really no way for me to get to an art store, that the nearest one for me. Um, and the same can be said for a lot of Indigenous people, if they're living on reserve. I don't think a lot of reserves have dedicated art stores or anything like that. So the thing is with digital art, when you're in a digital art software, no matter what it is, you have as many canvases as you need, you have as many um, brushes as you need and all the colors of the rainbow just sitting right there, and you can use that as long as the device keeps on running. So I think that can help bridge the gap that some Indigenous people face when it comes to access to art supplies. And also when it comes to digital art, once you have that digital art file, um, you can use that for anything really. You can print it on t-shirts, you can vectorize it and blow it up into like, a 25-foot long mural.
Mhm.
Um, you can use it for so many different things. And I think that's what the future of Indigenous art is going to be in a way. I think that a lot of Indigenous artwork, and I already see that quite a bit, is now moving towards digital because there's just the possibilities are endless. There's so many different things you can do, and I think we're approaching a really beautiful future when it comes to storytelling as Indigenous people because of these new technologies we have at our disposal.
And there's no doubt that your work serves as a beacon for young Indigenous artists navigating their own paths. But thank you, Jisa, for eliminating the profound impact art can have on communities and individuals alike. Now, as we near the end of our insightful conversation today, I'd like to ask the both of you for one final piece of advice for our listeners who are inspired by your journeys and the impactful work that you're doing with the Indigenous Friends Association. What guidance can you offer to those looking to make a meaningful difference in their communities, especially through tech and art? And how can individuals read, regardless of their background, contribute to fostering digital sovereignty, tech equity, and culture representation in meaningful ways?
I think for me is to be open to listen other worldviews, to listen other perspectives. Sometimes, and especially in tech, we have a very square-minded mindset in the sense of we just want to do things in one way. But when we are working with communities, when we are working in especially with communities that are very connected to the land, I think it's so important that we are open to listen other points of view. And very important that even that we are talking and highlighting the importance of the digital, we need to continue recognizing how the digital is having an impact on in the land. So it's so important that we continue doing efforts to be respectful to the land, and how, yes, we can trigger a lot of good actions towards the land in the digital, but recognizing also how the land is being affected. So that is my piece of advice. Tsista?
For me, when it comes to making meaningful differences in our communities, for me, what I would say is if there's any knowledge you have or a skill or a passion that you're proficient in, um, try to pass that on to the youth in your community. For me, I grew up in the city and now I live on Beausoleil First Nation, which is where my grandma moved away from. So we're now finally making that reconnection of actually living up there. And I'm reminded of how tight-knit our communities are and how close we all are to one another. And one of the things I think would be a huge benefit to them is everyone kind of pitching in. For me, I'd really love to start teaching artwork up there. That's a skill and that's a passion that I have. My little cousins, I also have a liking to fishing. So I'll take my little cousins out, teach them the best way I know to catch catfish and things like that. And I think if everyone in their own communities applied that kind of approach to educating and raising up their communities, I think everyone would, be a lot better off.
No, thank you so much for the both of you to join us and share your incredible journeys and the transformative work of the Indigenous Friends Association. I mean, both of your dedication to uplifting Indigenous voices through art and tech is truly inspiring. And thank you so much for sharing that with our listeners today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was the end of our conversation with Alejandro and Tsista. Today's key takeaways underscores the critical importance of creating platforms and opportunities that amplify Indigenous voices and perspectives in the tech and digital art sectors. Alejandro and Tsista's work exemplifies how innovation, when rooted in cultural understanding and social activism, can drive meaningful change and bridge gaps in education and employment and representation for Indigenous peoples. Their efforts remind us that at the intersection of tech, art, and activism lies the potential to foster a more inclusive, equitable, and understanding world. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Today's conversation reminds us the importance of supporting initiatives that empower Indigenous communities and the role of tech and art in driving social change. A special thank you also goes out to our partners, exclusive banking partner RBC, shipping partner UPS, and exclusive accounting software partner Xero, and our email partner, Constant Contact. We encourage you to subscribe to the Canadian SME Small Business magazine by visiting our website, CanadianSME.ca. Remember that every small step we take towards understanding and supporting each other's cultures and contributions makes a big difference. So thank you for that.